I, as the DM, am not allowed to use sock puppets anymore. It didn't go as well as I hoped.
Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. And for the last week or so, I've been lurking behind something called the Twisted Pint Tavern. In exchange for him promising not to press charges for loitering, he's going to read alongside me.
Hey Loot Goblin, thanks for having me in here. It is a blast to be reading with you.
Now, these wares for today is a bundle deal hailing from the land of r/D&D. The title being, what is a rule that you as a DM had to implement because one lesser brain-celled player?
The DM is not responsible for creating and writing your character sheet. That's your only job you've been given pre-campaign. He does the rest. I had a player ask me and a co-DM to make his character for him, which we obliged as we thought of it as helping a friend. He told us nothing about what he wanted and got mad when it wasn't what he wanted. Multiple times, hence this rule.
I feel like this is one of those friends who's like, yeah, I totally want to try D&D, but he's using his friends as a random character generator, which is not a good sign.
Well, and I get if you don't really know the game and you want to jump in and have them recommend a character, that's different, but you just got to tell them what you want to play. If you're not giving any guidance on that, then you can't really send it back for revisions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like at least when I started playing out, I think this is true for a lot of people. You want to at least like give it a try. Like you're kind of proud of that first character sheet.
Yeah, I mean, my first character sheet I still have laying around, and he was an illusionist, and I had a ton of fun with him. And was he optimized? No, he was my first character, but he was fun.
Yeah, so sometimes it's like you might be intimidated from it, but the fact that the man didn't even want to touch the paper until it gets handed to him first session, and he's like throwing away revisions as they give it to him, yeah, I'd be pissed as the DMs as well. No, Infinite is not a valid HP at level 1, neither is Immortal. We had a new player trying every possible way to marry Sue's character. This rule was literally made just so he would hopefully stop attempting to do this. In case you're wondering, he did not. So this comes from the original post, so 1 and 2 come hand in hand, and I think it's probably the same problem player.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same problem player, especially if they hadn't played before and then they were realizing that, oh, my character could die. I don't want that.
What do you mean a wizard can die to a paper cut level 1? My character's a god. Just check my backstory.
Yeah, it's all in my backstory, dude. He's immortal, he has infinite HP, and he can shoot lasers from his eyes. I, as the DM, am not allowed to use sock puppets anymore. It didn't go as well as I hoped. So at first it started out as a running gag that one of my PCs were super paranoid about being ambushed by mind flayers ever since they found out about them, to the point where even opening chests and safes became an issue for them. The RP was great, and we joked about a pocket-sized mind flayer living in a box. Eventually, I had the bright idea to make a sock puppet of a tiny mind flayer to insert into the game when they least expected it. I made an adjusted stat block and everything. That in particular went over well, but I had so many socks left over that I made a few more NPCs that the players interacted with on a daily basis. We decided to stop when one of my players, who was already struggling with the RP aspect, politely asked if we could stop using puppets because it was too distracting.
I feel really bad for that player because I can totally see a situation where they're like, I don't know if I want to play D&D. Is it like too serious? And they're like, nah, man, we're super chill. And then the man pulls out like 9 sock puppets and goes full in character.
Yeah, I wanna go into that shop, and I guess I'll ask the shopkeep if he's got anything on sale, and the DM just pulls out this little sock puppet with a mustache and a hat.
I want to see one where he like improvises them on the fly too, where it's like you go into one shop and you're like, so-and-so's in here today. It's like, wait, that's the wrong sock, and he like just puts like a little hat or something on it to modify. He's like pretends it's a new character.
Pulls out a marker.
Yeah, pulls out a marker.
I mean, hey, if sock puppets are your way to roleplay, I mean, I guess that's cool and all, but I guess it's not for everyone either.
Yeah, and it's a little cheaper than making a, custom Hero Forge or whatever, like made miniatures for every random NPC that the party picks up along the way.
I will say, though, I am totally making a sock puppet now just to mess with my players.
Make it the big bad evil guy. Put a evil mustache on him.
Yeah.
You may not use in real life knowledge of material science, physics, chemistry to build WMDs. I have had a few high int, low wisdom players.
Yeah, look, I get if you're a chemist in real life and you have that knowledge, but if you're not playing a chemist-based character, then they wouldn't. And even if you are playing a chemist-based character, I don't think trying to napalm your way out of every situation is the best way to do it.
Yeah, and this kind of lends into the idea of like people using like create or destroy water to like kill humans because they're 90% water or whatever, and like all these pseudo things that's like, yeah, no, we can't let you do that thing, and you should probably know why.
using modern day knowledge to assess and solve a situation from back in the time period that these fantasy worlds are based on is kind of a slippery slope when you start integrating science and such. So it's just a little tough to manage.
Yeah, and it gets even worse too. I love artificers and gunslingers, but I feel like the players that play those, they always like have that steampunk mindset. So they always take it like a step too far.
Yeah, first thing you know, the artificer's sitting there trying to tinker on this little magic device, and next thing they're building a train with rail-mounted machine guns.
And they're like, tell me one thing I did wrong in the book. It's like, yeah. You kind of know what you did wrong.
Offhanded, silly, out-of-character jokes will be given 3 chances before I interpret them as canon. One of my players out of character kept joking, saying stuff like, I slap him, LOL, just to be funny and without any intention of his character actually doing said action. I let it slide 3 times. On the 4th, I made him roll for initiative.
I think this is a totally fair rule. I mean, at that point, the joke has been beaten into the ground so many times that if they have to say it a 4th time, it's like, all right, come on, it wasn't that funny of a one-liner.
The old saying of comedy comes in 3s. So with this, you're allowing it to come in the 3s, but after the 3rd attempt, you're kind of in combat.
I'm trying to think of what happened, like the look on that guy's face when he's like, no, it's canon now. And the DM just has them roll for initiative that first time when he introduces the rule.
A tiny little story here. In the game that my brother's running, I'm playing a changeling. And in session 1, I took out a guard and ran up the guard tower and said something to the guard to try to get him to like leave his post. But I had an accent for my character and I said it in my character's accent without thinking about it. My brother didn't give me any, oh, you've got a few tries on that one. He just smiled and was like, well, you said it in your character's voice. So the gig was immediately up.
And I know that's like a pretty common thing too. If you say in the character voice, like that's the distinction that a lot of tables have. So that's totally a fair way to do it as well.
Oh yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Alcohol during the game is okay. No alcohol before the start of a session, however. Couldn't perfectly enforce it, of course, but it cut down on people showing up drunk. Yeah, I'm not really one to pre-game my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, so if that seems to be a recurring problem in your party, like there might be some out-of-character factors there.
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's players at the table as opposed to the game that's the situation there. If people are just managing their alcohol, fine, I don't think it's a problem. But if you do have people like consistently showing up plastered and trying to just start problems, then maybe having the rule of you can't show up drunk is fitting. One rule I, as the DM, had to implement for a drop-in game back around 2005-ish was do not try to invent gunpowder. These days, when someone tries to invent gunpowder, I just tell them it already exists, and if they go to a larger city, they can spend a couple hundred gold to purchase a blunderbuss or arquebus if they really want one. I'm kind of old school in the sense of there's no gunpowder in my world. There's like a key component that's missing that you can't make it with just because so many of my players are the, well, I throw a powder keg kind of people sometimes. But like in my pirate game, there's gunpowder everywhere, so that's kind of out the window.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that he seems to make it be tied behind gold, which is an all right way, but as time goes on, it's not going to save like a level 20 party from doing that powder keg example like you were saying even.
Yeah, low-level parties aren't going to be able to just blast their way out of anything, but by the time you hit level 5, you've probably got a couple hundred gold to drop on a bomb.
2-minute timer for spellcasters in combat. I think this one's short and sweet. It really says a lot because we've all run into like that person who brags about their list, you know, they're weighing the options, looking over the meta magic feats. Should they quicken this? Should they empower that? And a lot of the times, like this is combat, it's supposed to be 6 seconds at a time. So your character should do stuff instinctually. And even if it takes you a while to come to this conclusion, like the player would have to come to it a lot quicker.
I agree. I personally have some little sand timers, but I don't use them most of the time. They're more for like puzzle-based things, or if someone's like looking through every spell they've got every single round. But I also feel like this kind of has to scale, because when you get to higher levels, especially wizards and casters, you get a lot more options to your spells and your meta magics and all that. So like levels 1 through 3, you shouldn't need 2 minutes to figure out what you're going to do. But in some high level, really high stakes fights, you want to take the time to look through and make sure you got the stuff you want in line.
I do think that's a pretty fair distinction too, because obviously you want the turns to go by smoothly, but you do want to avoid them maybe defaulting to fireball and prepping counterspell. So you have to find the happy medium between being efficient and just letting them have flexibility.
I also think it comes down to if someone's taking too long consistently, that's where the DM can very easily say out of game, hey man, we're trying to speed combats up a little bit. If you want to build some like cheat sheets for your stuff, that's totally fine. And that could probably just solve the problem.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great way to approach it.
Having rogues in your party, if you can't give me a good reason as to how you're hiding, then no, you can't attempt to hide with your bonus action in an open, highly visible area. I get it, you want that potential advantage on attacks, but when you're in an open field with no conceivable objects that you can hide behind, just rolling a hide check will amount to a wasted bonus action. Also understand that some enemies, like the dragon you were fighting, have blind sight and can see you behind that partial cover with a 31 stealth check.
So I think this is an interesting rule because it seems like maybe this comes from an argumentative player, so he had to like set down very strict ground rules. This is a scenario where the DM and the rogue have to meet halfway. Mechanically, the rogue has the ability to do it in an open field, but he's going to have to try to improvise it a little bit and use the DM have to give him a little leeway.
Well, in the book for the hide action, it's a little vague, but it does kind of imply that you have to be able to hide. And honestly, there's a really simple solution to this, even if it's kind of dumb. But one of the things that I have had rogues in my games do so that they can always take the hide action as their bonus action is they also take like Magic Initiate or something and pick up Minor Illusion. Because let's say you're in a fairly open warehouse fighting and you want to run around a corner and try to hide. Well, the monster knows that you've just gone around the corner and are trying to hide, but just Minor Illusion a crate over yourself. Just Metal Gear Solid that.
Yeah, the Metal Gear Solid option's always a great one. And another thing too, a lot of the time, unless you've split the party, there's always like the big barbarian you can hide behind or something. So you gotta like meet the DM halfway. This is where flavor and mechanics need to be hand in hand.
Yeah, if you can't ever hide, it's a problem, but if you're always trying to hide, that's also a problem.
Do not hire mercenaries. I didn't spend the last week prepping this session just so you could pay in-game money to not play it. So this one's kind of funny because at this point they're just playing Noble Simulator, I guess, and I can understand why the DM's a little mad.
I agree, but I also think it's like hiring mercenaries and hirelings and such is a mechanic in the game for a reason. I don't think you should go in with the intent to just bring a small army to defeat the entire session, but by not allowing them to hire mercenaries or hirelings or anything like that at all, I do think you're also limiting yourself.
Yeah, and this is where DM creativity needs to come in. Like, one, who are the mercenaries and like what is the actual objective? So if it's going to a really dangerous dungeon, like these random grunts might take the money and run because they're scared, or they might just be a low-level adventuring party that you just send to the murder dungeon. So yeah, it's not going to be completed.
Well, and NPCs aren't just bots either. Like you said, if it's like a really dangerous thing, they might not be willing to go do it. So you could be in a big town that has a whole mercenary guild and you go and you say, hey, we're going into this really dangerous scenario and we need 10 of your best men. And he's like, no, why would I send 10 of my men to die?
Yeah, no, overall, I totally understand the frustration of a party saying, yeah, let's do the opposite of what you want us to do, or let's just mitigate it and go to the interesting thing that you haven't prepped yet. But yeah, this is definitely where improv comes into many forms, and coming up with a compelling reason why the party has to do it is going to be one of them. You play your character, not me. Nor am I going to make choices for you. You want to do something, explain it. Don't assume I know what you're talking about. While I can pick up on the nuances you're trying to achieve, I need to know the basics first. I think this one's pretty well said. It's very often where you have like a player that seems very uninvested, that kind of expects you to take the lead, but at a certain point the DM is working on so many things that playing the player character while also keeping them happy, it's not attainable.
Well, and I also get when you have like a new player or someone who's not super comfortable with the role play that kind of just want to roll the dice and tell the DM what they're trying to do and have the DM sort of flavor it. But I feel like at a certain level, that becomes problematic instead of beneficial to that player. And in my games, like a lot of times, if someone's not giving me a ton of details, I'll ask them for more. Like I feel like asking, okay, how exactly are you going about this is sufficient because you need to know what they're trying to do so that you're not telling them that, oh, you do this when that's not at all what they had in mind.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's like, is it a commitment issue or is it a communication issue? Kind of like what you were implying.
I feel like the trope, the Matt Mercer trope of how do you want to do this applies to a lot more than just the finishing move in combat too. Because someone's rolling stealth checks and they're critically succeeding on one, okay, how do you go across this gap in your critical success way? It can be a really fun way to immerse them. And on the flip side, oh, you rolled a nat 1 while scaling this rooftop. How do you want to describe yourself fumbling down 30 feet to the ground?
Yeah, I do like that idea of like the near misses or like the critical successes and failures being explained by the player. Because like if you're this really strong warrior and you should be able to hit the commoner because you're a murder hobo, I guess in this scenario, and you roll a nat 1, or you can make it a comedic scenario. You can really do a lot and express yourself as a player through these rolls instead of just letting the DM say it with a cookie cutter explanation.
Yeah, you missed the commoner because he ducked. Well, maybe you missed the commoner because you're fighting in a tavern. I was going to go into a tavern joke, but I won't make you do that. But maybe you missed the commoner because you're fighting in a tavern and then you just stepped on a rolling mug or something and you fell flat on your back. Like, that could be a very comedic way to diffuse that situation instead of just, he ducked.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of ways to handle it, and kind of similar to like the very first story we had in this. A lot of it is like, yeah, you have to meet me halfway, player, and I think that's true for any campaign. A good DM can't carry a campaign if all the players are uninvested and not explaining it, and good players can't carry, campaign where the DM is phoning it in as well.
Yeah, at that point, if the players aren't that invested, you're basically just writing a book using players as your random number generators, and that's not fun for anyone. Well, thank you for having me, Luke Goblin. It's been a blast. I'm going to head back to the tavern, but I hope to see you again soon.
Well, it looks like that's all the stories we have for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share the video. And check out Twisted Pint Tavern, which I'm going to link down below for you guys to make it easy to find. Thanks for stopping by. We hope to see you in the next one. Farewell for now.